This week on the Baseline Podcast, Josh and I talk about how the NIL and the transfer portal is causing some big issues inside of college football. From Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher to having their own little infighting, to Jordan Addison going all the way to USC for reportedly quite a bit of money. And then from there, we talk about both the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs. We hear how Ben knows little to nothing about the NHL. And then we finish up by Ben getting to explain with everything he has that he owes Josh nothing from their bet earlier in the year. All that and so much more coming up on the Baseline Podcast. Hey, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Baseline Podcast. I'm Ben. He's Josh. Well, Josh, how are you feeling, Josh? You seem a little out of it, just a little bit.
Not the greatest, Ben. 2 more weeks until my bodybuilding competition. So the calories are really low, activity's really high. I don't really feel like doing anything else. And I guess it's showing up a little bit in my face. So,
he does.
I'm here though, and I'm ready to talk sports. Something fun to take my mind off of being hungry.
He does. Oh, that's a good joke for me being hungry. I like that. That was a good one. You didn't even know you did it. No, but everyone that's watching, he does care about you. He does. It's just, lack of calories does that to a person. I did not have my lack of calories yesterday at a wedding, so I'm all excited and ready to go. So we are here once again to do another episode. And if you also, please make sure you subscribe if you're watching. If you're listening, just don't listen to this part, but subscribe. Many more videos are going to be coming out. Also subscribe over to Josh's channel. He has some really cool videos that actually make me realize how much I am not built like a bodybuilder. So go check our channels out. It'd be really appreciative from both of us if you would do that. But let's talk sports. And before we get talking about any of our stories, we line these things out. We're going to talk about these certain things. I just want to mention just this one little thing that, back in April, we had this little bet, this little wager that the Cleveland Guardians would win the Ohio Cup, that they would beat the Reds. And it looked like you were on your way to have a good chunk of change in your hand. Well, technically on Venmo, but still in your possession. And yet they choked to the Reds, who, by the way, I'm just going to clarify, they still suck. So as I say every week. So Josh, let me hear your heart feelings and what's going on in that heart of yours.
Someone at church that I know this morning that is also a Reds fan had to give me a hard time about it, but it's expected. First game, I think, was 5-4 in extra innings. Second game was postponed today. Then they ended up losing that one 4-2. I don't know, Ben. I've been pretty high on Cleveland's offense just because it's had its moments this season. It's had the numbers way further along this early in the season than they usually are. Like we're outperforming. Now they got a losing record and they're in the middle of the division. So now we've fallen back more into about what I would expect Cleveland to be in the month of May. And I don't know what that means. If that means that we peaked too early and now it's just downhill from here, that can't really get much worse than losing to the Reds twice in a row.
Hey, I will say if there's one bonus for the Reds is that they're actually not technically the worst team in baseball, because the Nationals they now have the tied for the most losses with the Reds. So technically
losing percentage.
We still suck. Yeah, we still suck. But I will say though, what happened to your man Stephen Kwan? Like, I thought this was like the new, young dude, and then he just kind of disappeared off the face of the planet there, Josh.
Yeah, well, you can't expect the man to be getting on base every single at bat. That pace he set those first, I think it was 5 or 6 games before he even had a swing and a miss. Like, you're not going to be able to maintain that. So
no,
hopefully he can find some of his spark back. Naylor, we'll hope that he can find his power back. And Jose's been pretty much maintaining MVP level numbers. So yeah, that's been the one consistent at bat is Jose Ramirez.
Joey Votto came back this weekend for the Toronto series, which is kind of funny because he's from Toronto. And I looked at his batting line. I realized he's hitting 120. And I'm like, that's when the Reds are going bad. When, your $25 million player is hitting 120. I think me and you, maybe closing our eyes, could hit better than 120 on a maybe a good day. I don't know, but that's pretty. It's pretty sad. But Josh, we have a lot of craziness going on in football and in college sports, which is not a shocker for either of us, because I think every week we talk about the craziness in college football. But there were some accusations thrown around this week in college football, Josh. And I'm interested to hear your take and what is going on. Explain to the people what has been happening here in college football and what are those accusations?
Man, well, first off, me and Ben already aired our grievances towards the transfer portal and the way that NIL has been handled last week. So be sure to check that episode out if you want full details on that. A couple of these topics are going to be related to that. But I was going to bed. I can't remember when it was first breaking out, Wednesday or Thursday, the video of Nick Saban speaking to what looked like a crowd of boosters and Alabama support staff. Just kind of the way that I took the video when I saw it the first time was just he's telling them that they need more money because all these other schools are buying players with the legality of NIL now, and they're not paying out the money that these other schools are, and so they're losing talent. And he was kind of getting at, we need more money because we're not going to be able to sustain success like this. We had the number 2 recruiting class and had $3 million NIL. Texas A&M has the number 1, and they paid out $30 million, bought every player, was like the quote that ended up getting, I guess, spread out the most. And then the next day is when like national media is starting to talking about it, because like this was at 1 a.m. So it might have been really early for you over in Hungary, very late over here. Yeah. But it was all the buzz all morning the next day. Jimbo Fisher got into a press conference at 10 a.m. that day to respond, and he ended up escalating this even further because of how personally he took this. Like Saban was just using examples. I thought he wasn't really taking shots necessarily at Jimbo, or Deion Sanders was the other one over at Jackson State. He was just talking to his boosters like, we need more money because if all these other schools start paying money and getting better players, we're not going to be able to compete with them. And Jimbo decided to take it personally. Still is rolling on the belief that they didn't buy anybody. He thinks that all these kids didn't come for a 7-figure check. It was just because Texas A&M has such a great culture, going 8-4 every year. And Jimbo's only brought in like a total of five-star recruits in the first 4 years he's been at A&M, and all of a sudden gets 7. Yeah, that's a little bit because of money. You got to admit it, Jimbo. Come on. And then the other word he kept using over and over again was, we did not break state laws, which was also kind of interesting because he's like, okay, he's not denying that they illegally brought anybody in or that they even bought anybody with NIL legally. He's saying they didn't break any state laws, which nobody's accusing him of breaking state laws. I just talked a lot, Ben. Let me hear your thoughts on some of that I just said.
First off, it's funny because obviously whenever something happens like at night in the States, I hear about it in the morning, right? So any scores, anything that happens, I wake up and I see it, at 5, 6 in the morning. And I just see the video and I'm like, oh, okay. Like, Saban's kind of speaking truth. Like, they did spend a lot of money, and, you don't see Ohio State. I mean, Ohio State spends money, but they're not, going out and, buying players. They're just saying, here's our culture. Hey, here's some bonus stuff if you make it here, right? Or you choose to come here. My issue is when then Jimbo made Saban to look like he is the most evil coach that has ever walked the planet Earth, and yet
despicable narcissist,
and yet he worked for Nick Saban. And so for me, I'm sitting here, as a former football coach myself, sitting here like, I always had the utmost respect for the people I worked for, but also like Nick Saban is never like, he's probably, I mean, we don't know what Nick Saban has done behind the scenes, but I don't believe from what we know that Nick Saban's out there, doing certain things. I think it's the culture that he's built at Alabama and then at LSU before that. And I think it's the same thing with Ryan Day, with Dabo Sweeney. Like, these guys are out there, they are making their cultures what attracts players. I'm sorry, you can't sit there and tell me that you spend over, what was it, 30 million, I think it was, right?
30 million A&M for this class.
So you spend 30 million. You're not telling me that any of those kids are going to go, you know what, screw the culture, I just want to get the money, play there for my 3 years and then leave, right? Or do the whole Quinn Ewers thing, play for a year and then I'll leave. Because I would not be shocked, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but Josh, I wouldn't be shocked if in a year you see some of those 5 stars go, you know what, got my check, All right, let's go to
What are the odds
Alabama.
that all 7 5-stars are still there, rolling around there by the time their junior year comes?
And like you go to like Jackson State, right? Like I agree with what Dion's saying. Like they need more money. Like if they're going to compete, they need more money for a lot of things, And I think, but it's just funny because Nick Saban wasn't like pointing out to Jimbo and saying Jimbo sucks at coaching. He can't coach, so he has to buy his players.
There wasn't
he just said, hey, if they get to buy their players, they're going to have the advantage. It's true. Like,
right.
It's not a lie. And I think Jimbo is, as the old adage goes, he's trying to, dig himself out of his own hole he's made, right? Like he kind of, this is, he can't, he obviously they're not allowed to be involved in the NIL deals, but let's be honest, he's not stupid. Like, I mean, he knows what is happening, right? Like his coaches know what's happening. And I think this whole thing has blown up to something that it didn't need to be. I think this could have easily been solved, as you probably know as well. Like, just admit it to it. Be like, yeah, we spend money on our NIL deals. Like, even if he can't, have somebody else do it. Like, but to call out other people, it's so petty, and it's so beneath a Division I football coach to be doing, and calling literally the greatest coach of all time. Like, especially when he was like mocking the greatest of all time. It's like, no, Jimbo, he is the greatest of all time. And there's no like, you can't, what are you going to say? So those are my thoughts. I don't know. You can bounce off those if you want and kind of add on.
I guess to play devil's advocate and look at it from the other side, maybe Jimbo being under Nick Saban's, system before when he was his OC at LSU knows the kind of stuff that Saban does behind the scenes and has just never been outspoken about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because like there aren't too many coaches that are talking shade on other coaches, because there's probably dirt on literally everybody. And if you decide that you're going to start talking, kind of pulling someone's skeletons out of their closet, that they can definitely do the same to you. So nobody just talks about it. So that's one thought that I have heard on, Jimbo would know if Saban does anything shady, because he's been in his building before. And then the aftermath of this, like, I think it's done now, but it pretty much ended with Greg Sankey, SEC commissioner, just going, guys, get along, please. Just stop. There wasn't any kind of investigation that happened. There wasn't any kind of fine, or it was just, guys, calm down.
It was
I guess Lane Kiffin was going to go, I think, on like the Rich Eisen show or the Dan Patrick show and talk about, just some of what was happening there, and like why. How did this happen? Like two coaches going at it like this, like that hard to each other, and Sankey wouldn't let him do it.
So what would you say, Josh? Like, I don't know, like as a fan, I think as we both are fans of, college football, and look, I get it. Fans kind of bickering with each other, or, players kind of, but like coaches, it just seems like one of those things you just don't do. Like, I don't know. I've been a coach. I just never thought I would like, I'm going to call out the neighboring, city's coach, because I want to, to me, it's like, what are you setting for your players? What is, Jimbo setting for his player, but even Nick Saban in the sense, like, I think we live in this culture nowadays, Josh, where you have to be really careful what you say, because you say one thing, you might mean it in a totally different way, but it can be assumed in such a big way that can affect so many things. So what is your thought on that? Like, do you feel like coaches should be just like doing these punch bag routines, or should just be like, hey, no comment, move on and go on with life?
Well, honestly, how many head coaches do we see that talk? Like,
exactly.
Maybe outside of Deion Sanders. Like, Deion Sanders talks a lot, but it's not really trash to other coaches. It's just more about what they've done at Jackson State and like just about HBCUs in general. But
Jim Harbaugh does.
Jim Harbaugh will talk. Yeah, Lane Kiffin will tweet. I guess
Jim Harbaugh doesn't know how to shut his mouth. I'm sorry, Michigan fans, but he doesn't. I'm sorry. Ryan Day doesn't go out there and bash things or lie about things. I'm sorry.
Yeah, there's just not a lot of coaches that talk. So, yeah, I guess it's just not really the coachy thing to do.
Yeah.
But just go ahead.
No, I just think it's frustrating because, like, now you're going to have young coaches coming up in the ranks be like, well, Nick Saban and Jimbo Fisher did this. Now I can start calling out people. And it's like, do we really want to go down that road? Do we?
some people have argued whether this is good for the sport or bad for the sport, because everybody's talking about college football, but then bad because it's like these are two of the top 5 head coaches supposedly, and they're acting like kids. But just kind of summing up my thoughts on it, I don't think Saban was wrong with what he was saying. Like Alabama, I mean, we're still very early into this transfer NIL era, but teams like Alabama, and I'm going to throw out Ohio State too, really haven't dabbled too much into the NIL money stuff. Now, Alabama's taken advantage of the transfer portal a lot, but that's something Ohio State hasn't really done so much of either. These programs, how long can they sustain success just relying on good coaching and development for the NFL? Like, eventually, when is money going to need to be involved? I guess we will find out.
I'll say this. I think where that starts, Josh, is the high school ranks. What is being instilled at that high school level? Is it what coaching matters or what's going to get you the most money? Depending on what them high school coaches are telling you, those camps they go to. Because I think if there any NIL stuff goes on, I think it starts in that high school camp area. I think that's where you start. I don't know this. Obviously, I don't know this, but it would make sense in my brain that this is where you start having those conversations of, how much do we, give a kid? But I want to go back to what you mentioned about Ohio State and Alabama and the culture thing. I've always said this, we've always had different revelations of the game of college football, right? We've had the challenges in different equipment being used, different rule sets, different things like that. And what's always lasted? The tradition of college football. And I believe that college football's tradition will not die out. I don't think that you're going to have these programs that are very well known, that have the coaching. It's hard for me to go sit here right now and say, it won't matter in 10 years of how good of a coach you are or how good a coach staff you have. It just matters how much money's in the bank, because to me, then that's not college football anymore. And that's just a minor league football system. If that's what we want it to be, then okay, let it happen. But for me, college football is so unique. And I just struggle right now to say, you know what, this is going to be the way college football will be, is just buying players, because then will I even watch college football? And that's the question I have to ask myself is, if it's just a minor league football system, do I really want to watch it anymore? And that's the question.
We don't want this to just be a subpar version of the NFL. Like, why does the XFL, the USFL, the AFL, and like all these other like football like startup leagues, like why do they fail? Because at the end of the day, they're leagues that try to be like the NFL. The XFL, I think, is gonna the reason they're restarting. They're able to find a little bit of success before like COVID ultimately killed the league the first time, and it's coming back, is they were trying new things out. And this partnership that they got with the NFL now to try to, I guess, be experimental and maybe try out new rules and not make it like the NFL, I think that's going to lead them to more success than maybe some of these other leagues. And college football, the reason why it's so successful is because it's not the NFL.
Exactly.
It's all about the tradition and the recruiting and the marching band and the rivalries, like, and the culture is just totally different. Stadiums are like twice as large as the NFL. Like, it's a big party and it's a blast. And that's why people love it.
Let me ask you this, Josh. What is your first ever moment of a college football game, whether you attended or you didn't, that sticks out in your head? What is the one?
The first college football memory that I remember was Vince Young running the game-winning touchdown in the Rose Bowl over USC to break their winning streak of like 3 straight national championships, like 30-something straight wins. And then I was just forever a Vince Young fan from that. And I even still kind of have a soft spot in my heart for Texas football. Like I like it when they're good. I wouldn't necessarily call myself a Longhorns fan, but I do like college football more when Texas is good. That's like the first big memory is Vince Young's touchdown.
And with that memory, what do you remember about the crowd?
It was incredible. Like, he disappeared into the crowd, like after he ran through the end zone and then ended up being in like the crowd of, I can't remember how many people were there, but I mean, imagine it was close to 100,000.
And I say that because that is what makes college football different. You'll never see the atmosphere of pep bands and weird college students just that are doctorates, but they're nerds on the weekend days, but then they become weirdos on the weekends, right? Like, there's just something about college football. I remember my first ever memory, right, was when my dad took me to before that, my first ever memory was watching Ohio State win a national title against Miami in 2002, and then going in like minus 10-degree weather and watching the celebration in Ohio Stadium, and it was freezing cold. And I remember that. But then even more personal is when I went to my first, what is it called? I can't remember now, but I went to my first football game, really, and then we went to the skull session. There we go, and being able to experience the band in the old arena, and that for me is culture, it's tradition, it's what we live for. And if you make this about money, Josh, I don't know if we really will ever have that again. Will we just lose that tradition that we've always lived for?
I think for now, like the top athletes, the ones that really do have the NFL in their mind, that have a good head on their shoulders, that are kind of already behaving like pros, they're going to, I guess, look at these programs and think, okay, well, going to, say, Ole Miss, getting $4 million NIL deal, that'd be nice. But what if I went to Ohio State, where they're only offering me $1 million, but I know they're going to turn me into a pro, a first-round pick, and then that $4 million that I got at Ole Miss ends up being nothing compared to the rookie deal I get, which will be nothing compared to the second contract I get, where I'm going to be making, 7-8 figures into the league. Like, that's going to be, I guess, how things are going to have to be sold for now. Like that, I think that's how Ohio State sells itself. Like, you see Garrett Wilson, you see Chris Olave, you see Jackson Smith and Jigba. These guys, they're making way more. But speaking of money, I found out, we know now that Jordan Addison is headed to USC, and he's rumored on joining them on a $3.5 million NIL deal, which actually is paying him more than what George Pickens is making with the Pittsburgh Steelers as a second-round draft pick. That's the rumor right now. I don't think that's been 100% confirmed, but yes, it's got to be one of the largest cash NIL deals we've seen so far. But
this is why I hate LA. I'm sorry. This is why I hate LA. You freaking just have money just like crawling out of the crevices of LA. You can just throw $10 million to Riley a year, and then, oh, by the way, we'll buy you a mansion. Oh, and then we'll go out and get your receiver. What, you want a quarterback? We'll get your quarterback too. Man, it must be nice to have money. Oh, it must be nice.
Yeah, it was kind of narrowed down to Alabama, USC, Texas.
I said Texas too. Dang it, I said Texas.
Yeah, Texas kind of had their reasons, but I thought there was just too many questions about Quinn Ewers and then the bad season they had last year that was going to make him decide between Bama and USC. And I figured Bama, just because of the Jameson Williams path that just happened, and Addison may have saw that and wanted to, I guess, do the same thing. But in USC, he's with Lincoln Riley, who's coached some of the best receivers like Michael Crabtree when he was an assistant at Texas Tech. He's had CeeDee Lamb, D.D. Westbrook, Hollywood Brown come through that Oklahoma program. He's got a quarterback with Caleb Williams, who we just saw ball out as a freshman, and hopefully he can take another step forward. There's a couple other big transfer gets that USC's got, and I believe they got Jerry Rice's son to come out, and then one of Oklahoma's other big-time receivers. So USC, I think they're going to be a contender for that Pac-12, and Addison's going to play a role in that. What kind of a duo do you think Caleb Williams and Jordan Addison can be? You think it can mimic anything that Pickett and Addison just did last year?
I think I need to see more from Caleb Williams. I still think I need to see a little bit more from Caleb Williams. I think it's one thing to do it at Oklahoma, and I'm not saying he did a very good job, but I think you're switching. Yeah, it's the same coach, but you're switching places, teams, new players around you. It's not like, Addison's going from, Pittsburgh to Ohio State and having a guy that's been there who, it's basically like you're joining a brand new, you have, Lincoln Riley, one of the best offensive minds in all of college football. But to me, I'm just going, I want to see more out of Caleb Williams. I want to see a guy that's been able to do it. And do it more consistently, I think, and we'll see what happens. But I think, if it works out, I think this team can make the Final Four, can make the college football playoff. But again, USC has shown over the last few years that they can be all hype and then nothing happens. No offense to USC fans, it's just a reality. It's like Texas, kind of like you hype it all up and then it's just kind of dwindles out. But what do you think, Josh?
The other thing too with Williams being over at USC now, not that the Pac-12 is any kind of big time conference, but it's definitely got to be a stronger defensive conference than the Big 12 was, right? Like we saw Caleb have his best game, probably the first one that he broke into against Texas, which I think ranked something wild like 120th or 106th. In the hundreds for sure for pass defense. Like Texas last year was bad because not their offense, it was the defense that was causing the problems. And now Williams, he's also making money now too. So how distracted is he with some of that stuff off the field?
And you're in LA.
Question. It's a valid question for a 19-year-old. Like these are real distractions, and we've seen.
And he's in LA though,
right?
And he's also in LA,
right? Like, I mean, these are, I mean, you can say that these are old head questions that, he's a baller, he's going to be fine. But it's like, these are real, legit distractions that we've seen affect younger kids. Like, he's not a pro yet. He's still just 19 years old, I believe, or something like that. So I don't think it's a done deal yet. But I mean, he was the number one quarterback in his class, I believe. So I mean, the talent is there. So it's gonna be interesting to see what kind of a season he pulls off.
We talk about so we talk about the NCAA here. I want to finish up the college football talk with this, Josh. Who do you think coming out of this spring do you feel is going to be in your college football playoff? Way too early predictions for your college football playoff for next January when it all happens. Yeah,
Bama and Ohio State are the only two that I would say are locks. They both have Heisman Trophy finalist quarterbacks. Bama also has last year's Heisman winner. I mean, they both have been super consistent. They both got a lot of not returning. Alabama has some returning guys, but they also did a lot of gets in the transfer portal. So their talent's still there. Ohio State's got maybe the most returning talent on offense in college football. Those are only two.
And that's by the way, losing Wilson and Olave, and they still have a lot of returning talent.
Shut up, Ohio State. Outside of them, Georgia's still a very popular team that people are predicting, even though they just lost 8 kids off that defense, even though they lost 15 total players from last year's team. Stetson Bennett's still the quarterback, and I'm just not sold for sure on them. People are also wondering if Clemson is going to be able to bounce back from the season they had last year. Will DJU be able to live up to the hype that he's had? Maybe even a little bit to that first game that he played at Notre Dame when he was filling in for Trevor Lawrence that one time. I mean, I'd have to see more from that too. Then out in the Pac-12, like, can USC be that team? Can Texas put it all together this year and be that team? Can Oklahoma, now that they've been raided by Riley with some of the transfer guys, and Venables is a new coach, and Dylan Gabriel, a new quarterback, talented, but still a new environment. Like, there's a lot of questions. I think there's going to be a new team that we're not seeing. I just don't know who that could be yet. There's going to be a new team, though, I see coming. Like the usual, I guess, like Georgia, Clemson, Oklahoma, they've kind of always been the mix. Then we kind of have a random team like Washington's gotten in, Florida State's gotten in, Oregon's been in before, and Cincinnati kind of snuck in last year. I think we're going to have a new team, and I'm going to have to do a little bit more research into who that team might be able to be, but maybe even the Big Ten is a conference. Maybe they can be that conference with 2 teams. Maybe Texas A&M with that great 8-4 culture will turn it into, maybe they can go 11-1. Who knows? It all depends on how that, because we've seen Alabama get into the playoff without making the conference championship.
Well, that's because you got
if Texas A&M's only losses to Bama, and depending on how Georgia's season goes, like they could sneak in too.
Ugh, I don't even want to see that. I hate to see it. I agree with you on Alabama, Ohio State. I think we both can sit here and say that if Ohio State or Alabama don't make it, that's because either like Stroud fell off a cliff and has disappeared, and same with Bryce Young, because I don't see Ohio State losing a game next year. I don't see Alabama losing a game next year. I think Ohio State had their schedule. I'm looking at it and going, people are like, well, the Michigan game. I'm like, really? We really want to put that. They're already pissed off because they lost to Michigan last year, and you're going to try to think that they're going to lose twice in 2 years in a row. Yeah, that's not happening. So I think Ohio State, I believe, I am throwing out here a team that I think many people are kind of on. But you know what? I'm going to say, because, again, I'm with you. I have no idea for those other 2 teams. I think Clemson will be back. partly because I want to see Ohio State versus Clemson again, because I just love that little like Dabo hates Ohio State, and I just want to see it, right? But I also think I'm just going to put Luke Fickell out there with Cincinnati. I don't know.
Even after losing 9 NFL guys.
You know what? You tell me a team out there that you think could be better fit, because we don't know. There's so many teams that we don't know what they have. And people are saying Notre Dame. I'm like, well, if they lose to Ohio State the first week of the year, then, well, that's kind of like.
I think Notre Dame shot themselves in the foot enough that they kind of need to go undefeated to ever be able to get back.
No, it's called, Josh, they need to go to a conference. A conference. That's what needs to happen. If they would just grow some kahunas and go into a conference, we wouldn't have this issue. But they're just scared to go to the Big Ten for the last 30 years. But that's just me just being mean.
I don't like the name either, so I like to harp on.
I know. So we really don't know. I mean, I really don't know. I think it's going to be. I think you could throw any team in there, really. The other two teams. So let's just say for now, Josh and I say at least 2 teams for sure are way too early college playoff prediction. But as the year gets closer, Josh and I will have a prediction for you, and you'll probably think we're wrong, and that, you know what, that's okay, because we're in a free country. So we think. And so with that, we're going to move on to some other sports, because, I think Josh and I talk way too much about college football and other football in general. But I will touch on, I shouldn't say we're moving completely away from football. We'll just briefly touch on Jadeveon Clowney. Give me your 5-second opinion on Jadeveon Clowney re-signing with the Browns for 1 year.
Love it. We didn't overpay, and we're also kind of on that 1 year, so it's like we're not trapped into any guaranteed money with a potential injury.
Love it. And I will agree with you, and I also say love it. I think it's a great addition. It gives us more stability. It also gives us a guy that can just destroy on the other side. So there we go. See? That was more than 5 seconds, but it's okay. I make the rules here. And then, so moving on to the NBA playoffs, and we have the NHL playoffs, because we have literally not talked about them at all.
It's just always kind of like on a weird day. Like, it is. Where
we record. Okay, so if you didn't know,
there's less games going on.
Also, if you didn't know, we record on Sunday. So all these games, like, either in the mid-series or it's like the beginning of a series already. So it's like awkward to talk about it, and sort of. So we thought, this time there's less games, so we can talk about it more specifically.
We also won't know an NBA Finals matchup. Exactly. No series will be settled. So yeah, we found a moment.
So, Josh, give me your thoughts on the NBA playoffs. You kind of know where I'm going at with this talk, but I wanted to hear your thoughts on the NBA playoffs so far.
Yeah, with the path that the Miami Heat had, I guess I'm not surprised that they are at this point. And really, the Boston Celtics, not really either. We know that they've had the team, but Milwaukee put up a fight, and is also a team that you just can't overlook. And maybe if Chris Middleton's healthy for the full series, it's Milwaukee that's facing Miami in these Eastern Conference Finals. But got to credit Boston. They finally are at this point. They've held the young core together with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown all this time. Some Celtics fans were skeptical of whether maybe they should trade them and some of their other assets to get some all-stars in the building. But we're seeing Tatum really turn into like an MVP type player. We're seeing Jaylen Brown become one of the top players in the league. Marcus Smart's also a lot more mature.
He's unreal.
Playing a lot more, I guess, smart, living up to his last name.
Wow.
Had to throw that in there.
Wow, that was a good one. That was a good one. You're on a roll today. The hungry one and this. I mean, you're rolling.
The smart one was actually intentional, though. The hungry one was an accident. Flipping on the Miami side, like, they were the 1 seed, so naturally they're going to have the easiest path to go. And they had to play. Who'd they open up with? Who was the 8 seed?
It was the Nets. Was it the Nets? No,
it was Boston opened up with the Nets.
Hawks. It was the Hawks.
All right, yeah, easy series there at the Hawks.
Because the Cavs choked. All right, that's what I know. You were trying to mention that, but yes, they choked.
Easy series with the Hawks. Not surprised by that one. Philly. I'm not surprised they were able to beat Philly either, because James Harden is a joke, and Joel Embiid also is injury prone. So, I mean, basically, I don't think we're having any different of a result, whether it was Ben Simmons or James Harden. Like, that trade never happened. Both teams are probably getting bounced at the times that they did. So Miami is here. Jimmy Butler, big Jimmy Butler fan. I've always have been. I feel like he's one of those guys in the league that's actually a true baller. More underrated guy, fights hard on offensive and defensive end. But But the Eastern Conference, I guess this is about what I expected. Maybe you could say it's a little surprising that Boston's here and they really able to get past Milwaukee, but given the circumstances, Boston's looking really good. That's my summary of the Eastern Conference, Ben. What do you got?
I'm sorry. It's the whole James Harden thing. I just think it's so right. I just started laughing. I'm sorry.
Patrick Beverley, too, on ESPN said that he
don't even get me started.
Max, and Stephen A. Smith rightfully told him, no way.
Also, Patrick Beverley needs to shut up. We'll get to it in the Western Conference here in a second, but he needs to learn to shut his mouth when he's talking about certain Hall of Famers that we'll talk to him about in a second. But speaking of James Harden, I believe I'm going to say something right now that I think many people will bash me about. And if you're in the comments, feel free. It's fine. It's a free country. So we know. And I would say this, that James Harden is one of those guys that I don't ever think deserve the full max. I don't. I think he's a guy that he's a good scorer, and I think he's a very good ball player. But like, what's happened? Like, what did he drink? Some like poison ale or something? I don't know what happened to James Harden. The James Harden that everyone wanted to be from when he was with the Rockets. But I don't know. James Harden, that's besides the point. But I would say this. I think, Josh, is that I think the Celtics have shown that you play good defense, and also, what is the trainer in Boston giving his players that they can just come back after like looking terrible injured and then they just randomly appear on the sideline again is just fascinating to me. Like Marcus Smart and Tatum, I'm partially with I don't really like the Celtics, but Deuce Tatum, his son, is just like the cutest kid ever. Like when he's like out there with his dad, like in warmups, like, I mean, it's just wholehearted. Like, that's just cool. I like it. And his name's Deuce. But I would say this though. I think I was shocked that the Bucks didn't pull off the win. I kind of thought maybe the Bucks would be in the Eastern Conference Finals. That was just always my thought, going through the playoffs. The Heat, I think, are it's weird. I don't know about you, but
they're very scrappy. They got like junkyard dog type vibe to them.
And they're not like
I really like it.
They're not like a team that you look and go, this should be the number one seed. Like if you look at that team, you're like,
they even have a top 10 player. Can we call Jimmy Butler top 10, even a top 15 player?
I think top 15. I think you can put Jimmy Butler top 15. Like at 15. I feel like
you gotta
15.
You're the number one. If you are the number one seed, you gotta have a top 15 player on your roster.
They got Bam Bam though. They got my man Bam Bam.
Bam is an all-star as well, to his credit, but still, I don't even think he's a top 15.
Well, they got Duncan Robinson. Is Duncan Robinson on that team still?
He is coming off the bench, but he's pretty crappy right now. He's definitely not his bubble self.
Yeah, they're not.
Hero, well,
they got Max
on that roster.
They have the
Lowry's there.
Max Struss, who is comes off the bench, but he actually played against Cedarville my freshman year. So fun fact, plays for the Miami Heat. He's a cool guy. But yeah, I think the Eastern Conference is just very interesting to me. I think it's going to come down to. Also, I saw a stat that the Celtics have played in half of the Eastern Conference Finals, which is bizarre to me that they've been in that many Eastern Conference Finals.
Well, you got to figure 11 of them, like 11 of them from Bill Russell winning 11 rings. Think of all the times that, I mean, I know the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen Celtics only won one, but they still were in the conference finals, a lot of those. They met the Cavs after that series when the Cavs were making.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Finals a lot. And then you got to figure in the 80s too with Larry Bird. Like they've been one of the most consistent franchises through all of time.
And I think you also give props to Brad Stevens for stepping down as coach and saying, "Hey, I want to go in the front office. I want to take over that part." And like, I got to give my hats off to him. Like that's a lot for a coach, as you know. You've been around coaches. It's hard for a coach to get away from the sideline and saying, hey, give it the keys to somebody else. Look at Urban Meyer, for example. Like it was very hard for him in every place he's went to give the keys and then not to want to do something with coaching. And I think Brad Stevens is saying, hey, this is your team. I'm just the guy that's putting the pieces together. And I think he's done an amazing job of keeping the pieces, but also putting pieces together as well, which I think is really easy. But what do you think about the Western Conference? This is where my real big hard take is for this. But I want to hear your thoughts.
Ben, are we about to? We thought the Golden State Warriors dynasty was done. We thought it was squashed by Kawhi Leonard and the Toronto Raptors.
I thought
they sunk them to lottery status. Are they about to make the finals and win it?
No. You have Luka. I'm calling him the freak. Yes, Giannis step over.
Dallas
Luka,
is down 2-0 though.
I know.
And I know they were down 2-0 against Phoenix, but Golden State's kind of like another animal, like
I
a different
know.
style of play.
I know they're down 2-0, but there's something about Luka. I mean, he's got that scar across his face now, looking like Kylo Ren, in Star Wars. I mean, is Luka. I mean, again, they are down 2-0, and again, it's Steph Curry, and I feel like Steph Curry's been saying this all year and last year as well. Like, you can keep counting us out, and I think LeBron James need to look over at Golden State and go, "Hey, oh, that's smart. Let's add some young guys to the team, and let's keep, like look at the Golden State Warriors.
Like they got Wiggins now, right? And they got
Gary Payton II.
They got James Wiseman from the draft, and
Gary Payton II, who's turned into an elite defender. You look at Golden State, right? They have 3 veteran dudes: Draymond Green, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry. Right. The rest of the guys are some younger dudes, veterans thrown in there. But you look at if you line up the Lakers roster to the Warriors roster, it's like seeing an old retirement home playing against high school boys. I mean, it is. That's literally what it is, because I've always said that in this day and age of basketball, it's not a bang down low game. If you have Steph Curry on your team, you have an advantage, right? Like you have that. It's like having the power up in backyard basketball. I don't know if you ever played backyard basketball, Josh, on the computer, but I remember having that like automatic sink in the 3. Yeah, that's pretty much what you're playing with. And I think the interesting thing, and the reason why I'm not counting out the Mavericks yet, is because one, I hate Golden State. It's a fact. I'm a Cavs fan. I still remember the feeling terrible. The fact that I think I have the bitterness towards Golden State, Josh, because of when Kevin Durant decided to join Golden State, because they felt like they couldn't beat the Cavs without an extra guy. But that's, still annoying.
It doesn't matter that Kevin Durant's not there and that the Cavs aren't the other team on the other side. I still hate them. Oh,
I know.
But let me bring up that age, since you just brought the age up. So James Wiseman, 21, Andrew Wiggins, 27, Otto Porter Jr., 28, Jordan Poole, 22, Gary Payton, 29, Kayvon Looney, 26. Like, we can go to the Lakers roster, and this is why I didn't think that they were going to be any kind of big deal.
We both said that. We both said that back in January. You can't just sign a bunch of
40-year-old has-beens that would have been dangerous if this was the 2008 NBA All-Star game.
Like if you put this team, I said this to a friend. I said, you put that Lakers team and you subtract 10 years. That Lakers team could go out and win. Yeah. That is a scary team.
This isn't MVP Russell Westbrook. This isn't. I mean,
Carmelo, LeBron,
this is
Dwight Howard
level kind of Carmelo. This isn't like these guys, Dwight, even like these guys are all like way past their prime, man.
And I'll just say this. So I think, my thing is I just love to see what Luka Doncic is doing. Whether the Mavericks come out of this, I didn't see the Mavericks being in this position. I did not.
Like the fact that they're this far along is pretty impressive, but it also means that now they're here in the Western Conference Finals, that Luka needs a teammate to step up alongside him and carry some of this.
Of course. Load. It's called Boban. Boban's going to do that. 7'3", Boban. I'm just kidding. Boban's like my favorite NBA player, like right now, just because he's so funny. Like he's 7'3", his hands are the size.
Funny looking dude.
Dude, he's his nose is like, it's bigger than mine, and I have a very big nose, and it's massive. But yeah, I mean, you look at this Mavericks team, Josh, and I think it's an interesting lineup because you have Doncic, but you look at this team and you're like, who's that guy? Like you said, you look at the Warriors.
Really
the Warriors have Klay Thompson, Draymond Green, Poole. They have Wiseman. You look at the Celtics. They have Brown. They have Tatum. They have Smart. You look at the Heat. They have, Jimmy Butler. I mean, the Heat are kind of in the same boat, but
let me read off some of these
do it.
Playoff stats from the Dallas Mavericks. Luka is averaging 31 points of the 105 the team's averaging. So you got to figure that's like 30% of the points.
It's like a 30%, third of
He's averaging 9.4 rebounds. The team's averaging 36. So he's getting 25% of the rebounds. We're getting 18 assists a game. He's getting 6 of those. So again, like 33% of the assists. Like he's literally carrying this team, putting them on his back. The next best scorer has been Jalen Brunson at 22.9 points. And then Dinwiddie at 12.9. Like it really falls off from there.
Both of those guys aren't really scorers. Like Brunson can score and Dinwiddie can score, but they're not guys that you're like, if you're Doncic, Doncic this offseason, you're going to ownership, you're going to Mark Cuban, and you're saying, hey, Mark, go out and get me a 5-year an all-star that you can sign to a 5-year max and bring him in here. Because if I'm Doncic, this is my question to you, Josh. If I'm Doncic, do I stay around? Like if the season ends here and they don't go to the finals, and once his contract's up here in the next year or so or whatever it is, what do you do? Right? Like, do you sit there and go?
This was supposed to be what Kristaps Porzingis was for, right? But
exactly,
he's been very, very injury prone, and like you said with Brunson, like he's not supposed to be a scorer, but he kind of has to because the rest of the guys on the team are like Reggie Bullock and Finney Smith and Burke and Chris and like all these other guys that they're not going to score. So
this is my thought. I know Jokic is going to probably sign a huge deal with Denver, but I would love to see Luka and Jokic, the Joker, on the same team. Can you imagine the combination of those two guys on the same team? Literally the back-to-back MVP guy, which by the way is a great little point to talk about, the fact that a big man has won the MVP back-to-back years and has made it look easy back-to-back years. That could be debatable though with MB, but I think it was him all the way.
I'm more impressed that it's a white guy that's winning MVP back-to-back. We ain't seen that since Steve Nash.
Josh, politically correct now. Come on now. We need to be politically correct.
Though, we've seen Giannis. Giannis is nearly 7 feet. He won it.
But according to the media, they're not considering him white. They consider him Slavic European. And I'm like, okay, well never mind. I'm just gonna quit trying at that point.
It's a fun conversation though.
Yeah, that is a great fun conversation.
Luka and Jokic, that would be a fun duo.
It'd be great duo.
But let me present to you and maybe even more realistic teaming up.
Mm-hmm.
Joel Embiid and Jimmy Butler. After that semifinal series, both still seem to have very high regard for each other, wish they were still playing with each other. That's literally basically verbatim what they said. They're both free agents summer 2023. Do they team up either in Philly or Miami or elsewhere? I feel like they're
Dallas?
definitely going to play together somewhere.
Can you imagine them going to Dallas with Luka? Oh boy, that's a dangerous team. You have those three dudes. Now, who's going to get the ball is the question, but no, I could see Miami being that place. Pat Riley, he's a guy that just likes to, put the team together that just gets the most fans in there, I think. But no, I think it's going to be interesting. But I do want to mention something before we move on away from the NBA here. I want to mention about the Suns, right? That to me was that is the most disappointing, I personally believe, out of the playoffs this year. The Suns, the whole season, everyone's like the Phoenix Suns are going to be in the playoffs. This is Chris Paul's time to shine. And they just flunked out. Like the worst I've seen a team flunk out of the playoffs in a really long time. I'm interested to hear your thoughts on the Suns. And then I want to talk about a little bit about what Patrick Beverley said, because I have some major issues with what he said. But first I want to hear your thoughts on the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, Phoenix got to be one of the deepest rosters in the league, right? Top to bottom with Paul and Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton, Michael Bridges, Cam Johnson. They got guys everywhere. So it's no surprise that they were the one seed in the West, right?
Yeah, easily.
Yeah, that just says so much about Luka. I think if I remember correctly, from just that series alone, Luka outscored Devin Booker. He out-rebounded DeAndre Ayton, and he stole Michael Bridges and out-assisted Chris Paul. Props to Luka, but Phoenix, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's so frustrating because I want Phoenix to do well. I love Monty Williams. He's one of my favorite coaches in the NBA right now. Just an amazing man, as an amazing man of God as well. And I wanted so much for him to honor his wife with a finals appearance and be able to have that. But it shows that if you are not prepped every game, that a team's going to come out and beat you. But I do want to go, Josh. I want to talk about what Patrick Beverley said on First Take, I believe it was, to Stephen A. Smith, when he basically called Chris Paul like a joke, like he's nothing. He's a cone. What? Excuse me. What is he, like a 6-time all defensive player or just he's been on off defensive teams. He's been on all NBA. He's one of the best guy who has some of the most steals of all time, assists of all time. And you're going to look there, Patrick Beverley. I'm sorry. Maybe you being a bench guy has all of a sudden gave you the wisdom of something, but I just thought it was very rude to tell a guy who's a legend in this game, who's brought a lot of fun to these kids' hearts all over the world. To tell me that you're basically better than him. I mean, that's pretty much what he was saying. Am I wrong, Josh? I feel like that's what he was saying.
He did kind of come off like he thought he was better than Chris Paul. And I mean, I'm not really a fan of talking about how good guys used to be and like saying that's how good they are now, right? Like with the whole Lakers situation. Like I've heard from other people that Chris Paul's defense was very bad that series. I didn't watch a single game, so I'm just going off what people have said. But Patrick Beverley isn't the only guy that I've heard say that Chris Paul played bad defense in that game. But I mean, in the past, Chris Paul's been a great defender. He's led the league in steals before, I believe.
The dude's 34. No, he's 36, 37 years old.
Actually, I think.
Yeah. So it's like Patrick Beverley.
So, and I don't expect Chris Paul now at age 37 to continue to be one of the best defenders, especially when he's still like being relied on to be one of the team's main scorers and distributors. So, and Patrick Beverley, I mean, that's his thing. Like he goes out there and he gives all his energy on the defensive end. He's just a menace. His job, I have always felt like, is to get the other team's star player ejected. So when he does that, sometimes he ejects himself in the process. But it was very kind of weird. Like he just kind of went out there and just basically, you would have thought Patrick Beverley is like a multi-time all-star in this league with how highly he was talking of himself.
But he's not, dude. His stats alone, Chris Paul, if he had a broken leg, would probably have better stats than Patrick Beverley. Like, I think it's just I mean, again, I think me and you can both sit here and say Chris Paul one day will be in the Hall of Fame. I believe so. I think he's one of the greatest players, at least one of the greatest point guards to ever play the game. Has he kind of came up short in the postseason? Of course. There's a lot of great players in NBA history that have come up short in the postseason, but that doesn't mean he's like a terrible player. And I hope Patrick Beverley realizes that, hey, this is only going to get you so far in life. Because once you retire, like, what are you going to do? Work for ESPN and work on First Take? Like what are you going to do? Like, I'm just wondering, like, with this tenacity, like, what are you going to do after you retire?
Well, ESPN needs somebody to bring in views, right?
I guess.
I mean, by that time, how much longer do you think Stephen A. Smith's going to be doing this? Kendrick Perkins is absolutely terrible. They need some more guys like JJ Redick, honestly.
No, they need more guys. No, Richard Jefferson's who they need more of.
Richard Jefferson, I kind of like how he trolls sometimes too. Like,
I love
people take him seriously, but you can kind of tell like he's just kind of joking or like he doesn't actually believe what he's saying. But JJ, anytime I see a Twitter clip of JJ talking anything, I'm like, man, this guy's always on the money. And I hope that ESPN does not do with him what they've done with Stephen A. and like what Fox has done with Chris Broussard and make him talk about like the NFL or the NHL or like other sports and pretend to be an expert. Like, no. JJ's awesome at talking basketball, talking the NBA. Leave him here, please.
That is Josh Burris's petition to ESPN. Like, they totally are caring about what we have to say.
I'm not going to watch their network regardless, but JJ and NBA.
You're welcome, Disney. You're welcome. I'm just going to leave that there. So we talk about the NBA playoffs. You know, I want to say this, Josh, before we move on to the NHL to finish up the show. Who do you think in this NBA playoffs? Who do you have going to the finals, and who do you have winning the finals? Let's give our predictions right now. Who's going to walk away with the Larry O'Brien Trophy? I almost forgot what it was called.
I wouldn't have known that either. I'm going to go with Golden State out in the West because while Dallas has been able to come back from 2-0 like against Phoenix, I think Golden State's a different animal. They got a lot more experience. They also have a solid deep roster, a good mix of young guys and veterans. So I don't think that Luka's going to be enough to be able to overcome them. So I think Golden State's going to come out of the West. Out in the East, it's really hard to say just because of Boston and Miami. They both can play really good defense. They both got several all-stars out there, and it might just come at the end of the day, like whose role players step up more, because we kind of got to assume that Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum are going to play well. You got to assume that Bam and Jimmy Butler are going to play well. But what about Marcus Smart? What about Tease? What about Williams? The other Williams, not the one that's hurt. I think it's Robert Williams that has an injury right now. Like, how are those guys going to play? How are like Tyler Hero and I guess the rest of Kyle Lowry and like some of these other role guys going to play? And I kind of want to say edge Boston, like in that sense. So Boston, it might take 7 games, but I'm going to go with Boston.
And then who do you got winning it all? I'll give actually wait, before you say that, I'll give mine, and then we'll both kind of say who win it all. So mine, I also, I want to say I'm going to stick with my thing about the Mavericks. They came down 2-0. I mean, my gut tells me that the Warriors are going to make it, but I'm just going to be different here. And so I'm going to go Dallas Mavericks out of the West. I think it's going to be in 6. So I'm going to say in 6. So maybe Dallas picks up 2 wins here and then finish it in 6. I don't know. And then in the East, I'm actually with you on this. I believe the Boston Celtics will eke it out. Really, it's going to be a real slim margin, but I think it could be. I think we could see Boston in the finals, which will be a really cool scene to see. Cool thing to see, I think, in just the history of the game of basketball, to see the Boston back in there. So, Josh, who do you have your prediction to win it all in the NBA Finals?
Boston, because I can't stand to see another Golden State title. Like, imagine this, Ben. It's 30 years from now, and ESPN's finally doing a 30 for 30 on the Golden State Warriors dynasty. They win 3 finals in 4 years against the Cavs. Kawhi Leonard supposedly ends the dynasty with the Raptors beating them with KD's injury and stuff. KD leaves. Steph and Clay just deal with all these kind of injuries, and they're relying on D'Angelo Russell to lead them, and they're a lottery team. They're supposed to be done. Then these guys come back, and they're back to winning finals. Like, this was supposed to be done. It can't happen. So Boston's winning the finals.
I'm also going to say Boston, because I'm also going to say even if it is the Mavericks, I still want to see. I still think Boston's just a better team than the Mavericks. But if it is Golden State, dear Lord, I never thought I would root for the Boston Celtics, but this will be a series that I will be on my hands and knees going, Boston, please, anything you can do. Because I don't want to hear Steph Curry. I mean, I used to love Steph Curry, but after a while, he just gets kind of annoying on social media at times. And so I would just, I don't think I could handle that whole celebratory thing. But yeah, so I think it's going to be a crazy couple games here to finish up. And so we're going to move on to the NHL playoffs to finish up the show. I'll be honest with all of you listening. I watched the Columbus Blue Jackets, and that is about it. My brother knows more about hockey than I do, and I know Josh watches more hockey than I do. So this is Josh's segment. I have a little thoughts on it, but Josh, go ahead and tell us about what's been happening in the world of hockey.
Yeah, so we are on to the second round matchups that we got happening right now. The 2 Florida teams, the Florida Panthers and Tampa Bay Lightning, who would have thought that the state of Florida would have 2 successful cold weather hockey, like sport teams? You know what I mean? Like, that's just kind of odd to me. But Tampa Bay currently holds a 2-0 lead there. They're winning right now. It's about to be done 3-1. So they're about to have a 3-0 lead on Florida. Carolina Hurricanes are playing the Texas Rangers, New York Rangers.
Wow.
Carolina. Yeah, that's crazy. I messed that up. Carolina has a 2-0 lead in that series, but right now in the first period, obviously you guys will know who won Monday, but the Rangers do have a 1-0 lead right now. The series I've been having the most fun watching, though, is Calgary and Edmonton. They play again tonight, so we're going to have somebody actually leading the series, but they've split the first 2, and they've both been pretty high scoring. The first game, Ben, actually was 9-6. There were 15 goals scored, which is just insane for any kind of hockey game. Like, I told you before the show, I was watching, and I think Calgary's lead was like 5-1 or 6-1 the second period. So I shut it off and went to bed because it's been like out on the West Coast and later at night. So I go to bed. I wake up the next day to find out that Calgary did win, but it was by 9-6. So like Edmonton made it at least a more.
I would say the goalies sucked. That's what I would say. Not
a good night for the goalies. Also, Connor McDavid's been a lot of fun to watch in that. So I don't feel like Edmonton ever is going to be short of points, especially, they got McDavid, they got Evander Kane, Duncan Keith. Like, they were a team that I thought had a chance to win it all once the playoffs started. And I wrongfully predicted the Toronto Maple Leafs would win it and break not only their streak of losses in the playoffs, but actually be able to come and win it all. Maybe that was a mistake to do that. But Tampa Bay's looking solid, Ben. This Calgary-Edmonton series has been fun. Also, I got to tell you the other series that's been going on, which is Colorado Avalanche and St. Louis Blues. The Avalanche were a pretty popular pick. They got a 2-1 lead right now after beating the St. Louis Blues 5-2 the other day. So a lot of exciting teams, a lot of exciting games have happened. Also, the first round, Ben, there were I think 4 series that went to 7 games.
Yeah, I see that up here right here. Yeah.
It just kind of goes to show that hockey, we say in sports that it's really anybody's night, but I really feel like hockey is like, man, it's so hard to predict. Like people that bet on hockey, I don't know how they do it. Maybe I just don't know enough about it, but it seems like anybody could win any given night and that nobody's safe.
Well, if you bet, we obviously know you lose. So
I always lose my sports bets. That's why I stopped doing it.
Well, you lost to me and I didn't win either, but you still lost. I would just say, all you just said there, I would say that, it's a great series. I'm going to give my 2 cents here. If there's fighting, I like to watch it. Like if I go through the hockey highlights on TikTok, if there's fighting, I'm tuned in 100%. Sorry, Mom. I really do. I enjoy that. And outside of that, I know there's like a few really good players. I know McDavid's one of them. I know there was the guy Matthews on Toronto Maple Leafs.
Austin Matthews, yes.
Yeah, but they didn't win. So I know that my mom's cousin roots for the Avalanche. So I'm kind of pulling for the Avalanche to pull out here. But also I know that I do know a little bit about hockey. I used to play like the video games. I kind of understand like when the Blue Jackets, I understand like that team and I watch that team a lot, but they've kind of sucked this year. But yeah, I just know that hockey is one of those games where I do agree with you. As I've watched like the Blue Jackets, I've been to games. It's crazy to see how these games, like out of nowhere, it'll be like a flip of the switch, and it's 3-2 after it was 2-0. It's like what just happened?
The other night, I mean, Edmonton won, but Calgary scored the first 2 goals, and they did it in like 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I do think hockey is very fascinating. So also, it's one of those things where I think it's so fast paced, but yet it's still like sometimes they slow it down. It's kind of like soccer in that sense, where it's like sometimes it's fast paced, but other times they kind of slow it down and do their thing. But yeah, hockey's been going well, and I'm going to just throw a prediction out there. Josh, I'm going to go eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by its toe. If it hollers, let it go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. Okay, so I have the Tampa Bay Lightning winning it all based on eeny, meeny, miny, mo. So
do you know, Ben, that the Tampa Bay Lightning are currently back-to-back Stanley Cup champs?
I think sure. I knew that, but I just
let me double check that. I'm pretty sure they've won the last 2 if my memory serves me right. But yeah, that was another popular pick, and that's another reason why I didn't want to pick him, because I'm just like 3 years in a row just seems like, I mean, repeating.
I should say, wait, hold on. I should say, because I just mentioned earlier that because of my mom's cousin that roots for the Avalanche, I'm gonna have to switch it to Avalanche just because family. So, eeny, meeny, miny, mo is off. I will choose the Avalanche because.
All right, yeah, the Lightning have won back-to-back seasons.
Yes, and I don't want to choose them. Stop it. I don't want to choose them. I'd choose the Avalanche. Okay. Avalanche is my choice.
I mean, Tampa Bay very well. I mean, they're looking good right now. They're crushing Florida, but a three-peat in any sport, like repeating, is even a challenge. Like if they were to win 3 in a row, that's why I didn't want to pick them, because I was just like 3 in a row just sounds insane.
So then who do you got?
Well, out of these teams right now, I don't know, man. Like Tampa Bay is looking good. I want to say Edmonton. That was actually my second choice once things started off. But again, like getting past Calgary is going to be a challenge. But I'm going to stick with what I initially thought. Like I went Toronto, and then I thought maybe it'd be Edmonton. So I'm going to go with Edmonton for now.
All right. So I got Avalanche, the Colorado Avalanche, and you got Edmonton Oilers. There we go. I can say it. So yeah, those are our picks. Coming from a person that actually watches hockey all the time, coming from another person.
Don't make me out to be. I don't want to get roasted in the comments though. I'm not like a hockey expert, guys. But out of the 2 of us, I do watch hockey games though, and Ben doesn't. So that's what we mean by expert.
That's why you're an expert.
I am the house expert. I am not an actual hockey expert. Don't tell me how stupid I am.
Which is what I mentioned before the show. I said he's our house expert hockey person until my brother comes on. I want
to reiterate that.
Yes. Okay. Just so you don't hang on your own noose. Anyways, Josh, we had another episode, great episode. Next week, it's up in the air. We might have a surprise guest host. It's just all up in the air for next week. So anyways, also, make sure you guys check out Josh's new videos that are out. Also, make sure you're cheering him on, praying for him that he doesn't die before this actual competition happens, that he has a little more energy. but also just root them on in the comments, send them a message on Instagram somewhere. Just let him know that you guys are thinking for him, cheering him on. As I know it's a big deal. I just eat the food. He's like not eating the food. So I'm just kind of, balancing out here on the show. But once again, thank you guys so much for listening and watching. You guys can tune in. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell. You can see not only this week's episode, but also last week's episode, like he mentioned earlier in the show, which is a great place to go check out all these different videos that are going on for just myself. But then also you can check out his channel as well. And also give it a subscribe. I'm just saying, just hit the subscribe button. Doesn't hurt. One quick thing, and that's all you'll have to do. And then also, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, make sure you guys favorite it so you can listen to it on the road or at home or wherever you may be very soon. And then also, very soon, probably, hopefully, I've been telling Josh this for about 3 weeks, but very hopefully we'll be having Instagram up to where you can hear more of Josh outside of him, more of his reporting side of him rather than just me and him talking. You'll get to see both of our sides of also other things we like to do. So that Instagram page will be out very shortly as soon as I get all the details done with that. So I got to get on that. But anyways, I hope you guys have a great rest of your week. Hopefully you have a blessed week and then you have a little fun as well. Till next time, we'll see ya.